What is up, everybody, man? Welcome to Expert Mentors Live. And this is John Kitchens, and I am excited to dive into this episode with Mr. Joel Perso. And we're going to dive in and talk about the exact strategy on how to execute in 2025 without sacrificing your life and without sacrificing your profitability. Joel, welcome, brother. Great to have you back on.
Always happy to be here, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, guys, don't forget at the end of today's episode, we're going to give you access to a couple of cool things. One, being able to book a call, discovery, clarity type call with myself, and also an opportunity to connect with Mr. Perso there on a systems and process audit that he has put together. I promise it's going to be well worth your time. So stay plugged in. And, tons of distractions. I saw a study Patrick Bet-David was sharing, and it was from 1910 all the way up until present time. And it talked about how much time us as humans spend on, it says learning, but I'm just going to say on just maybe consumption of some type of content, and be it listening to podcasts, reading books, going down the rabbit holes of social media, watching TV, Netflix, binging. But in 1910, it was 10% of the waking hour. To this point, it's 80% of the waking hour in some type of consumption mode. So being able to focus and avoid the noise, to me, is a competitive advantage. So really, finding this episode, this conversation, do yourself a favor. Eliminate the distractions. Put the phone on airplane mode, silence it. I promise you, especially in real estate, there's nothing that can't wait. 60 to 120 minutes in this business. So give yourself permission to play all out, stay engaged, and stay tuned in. I promise, the stuff that we're going to share with you guys today is well worth the investment of time and energy over the next 45, 50 minutes that we're going to be diving into today's topic around execution. So, Joel, a lot of folks so many new folks into the Honey Badger Nation. I think I heard yesterday just at EXP, it's a staggering amount of people that are actually coming back to the company on a daily basis. I think it's like 7 or 8 agents coming back to the company on a daily basis. And I know, Leo's and the growth team's objective, everything that they're doing is pushing to growth, and they want to get up, into the 6-figure range by the end of the year, 110, 112, somewhere in that is kind of the target. And so there's a lot of new folks, a lot of folks that haven't had the opportunity to meet you, haven't had even the opportunity to even connect with me, as we're 287 episodes into the Expert Mentor series. Julio told me this morning we're 2 months away from 7 years of this series, which is pretty crazy. We've missed more weeks than I thought, but we're definitely right there. 7-year run with Expert Mentors, and really don't see slowing down anytime soon. And so for those of you guys listening in, you're like, who are these guys? How are they qualified to talk about execution? And I mean, it's a great question. And, I just passed, October was 20 years in the industry. Got introduced to Jay in October of 2004, got licensed in January of 2005. And, just having multiple brokerages in Lawton, Oklahoma, and then Dallas, Texas. So under my watch, owning and operating 2 separate brokerages, 4,300, a little over 4,300 total transactions during the brokerage run. And, over the last 13 years in the one-on-one coaching space, we're right at 17,000 one-on-one coaching calls. And we're a couple months away. We'll hit the 10,000 hour mark, which is pretty cool. It is pretty cool. And just, such a unique perspective of being able to see so many different angles, either from within or helping clients work their way through. So it's really amazing. And, I know you've been a big part of that journey for the last, second half of the decade of 20 years in, 10 years, being able to connect and work with you. And what I love about your unique perspective and your unique viewpoint and what you bring to the table that I don't think any other operator brings to the table is that starting out as a TC. So being able to see the inner workings on the transactional side of things and working your way up quickly to head of operations to ultimately becoming a partner in a company doing over 400 transactions in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then stepping into a role with VRX Media that has so many moving parts all over the country, landing major contracts, running operations for that organization that ultimately got acquired by Zillow, and then stepping in for a 2-year run with Justin at Sphere Rocket. And so being all the way into the trenches of the TC role to, head of operations, COO role for a $10 million company. And then so in between, owning and operating a brokerage and then being a part of a company that gets acquired by Zillow. So pretty unique perspective. And so when it comes down to execution, I think we can definitely shed some light and talk on the subject at a pretty deep level.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. The deeper we go in our new venture, coaching people and my own personal clients now, the more convinced I am than ever that it's just execution's going to separate the winners and the losers over the next 5 years here. The people who execute at a high level are going to win every time. There's going to be no shortage of good ideas, no shortage of great strategies, no shortage of exciting things to work on, but the people who execute are going to win.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And, I think that's the main thing that we really want to drive home today. And it's really the struggle is execution. And so I guess my first question to you is why do agents fail and struggle to execute?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of reasons. I think part of it, a big part of it, especially the agents who are successful on the sales and marketing side, but struggle to put systems in place, struggle to build teams, or hit a plateau and then struggle to push past it, is a lot of agents are entrepreneurs at heart, and a lot of entrepreneurs are great starters and bad finishers. So I think if I had to look at one simple thing, it's great at starting and bad at finishing. And what I mean by that is, all right, you attend the event, you attend the coaching call, you read the book, you hear about the new thing, and you're a machine for that first week. You learn everything there is to know about it. You put it in place, you buy the software, you get it going. And then, reality sets back in and you got to get back to business. You got to get back to getting face-to-face with buyers and sellers. You got to get back to running your team. And so you end up with a whole bunch of half-finished projects, half-built systems, half-implemented strategies, because it's the ability to execute is really the ability to finish. And so there's a lot of great starters in the entrepreneurial ranks and in the real estate ranks, and there's many fewer great finishers.
So let's unpack that real quick. So I was just looking, what does the definition of execution mean? The carrying out or putting into effect of a plan, order, or course of action, which is interesting because you look at where it really starts, right? It first starts with an understanding that, one, you can't do everything on your own. I think that is super important to grasp, that a lot of the people that get excited and they go running with it, and it's a lot of hero ball. And you can hero your way so far. And I think it's the first realization and coming to just being okay with is that I can't do this on my own. I really truly need help if I really want to, carry out the plan, the order, the course of action, because there's so many pieces, like you said, that just it's impossible to do it all by yourself. When you look at just even the functions that break down any type of organization, I mean, there's three character types in any endeavor, and that's the entrepreneur, that's the idea person. Well, then somebody has to execute on those ideas. Well, then somebody also has to manage those ideas.
Yeah.
And when you try to do all three, that makes you a solopreneur. And you can do two, but you can't do all three. And you could be at multiple stages. I shared this with you that, I took Matt through this same exact exercise, and, they're doing 400 transactions a year, the number one team in Pennsylvania. And he's doing all three. He's a solopreneur. And it's like, Dirk, you got to let go of one of these three, and you can't do it all on your own. And it's hard, right? When you're just really trying to grind and really trying to get things done. So being able to carry out that plan, I think the first understanding is, man, I cannot do everything on my own. I've got to have some help.
Yeah. And I think the kind of the next level to that is really understanding and believing that you're not supposed to do it all on your own. Like, you can't do it all on your own, but that's not a failure. That's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be focused on the most important things. You're not supposed to be building the processes and managing the processes. You have to have people in place, and ultimately team members, software, AI to do some of those things for you. So it's not only that you physically can't do it all, but you're not supposed to. It's bad for the business if you are trying to do it all.
Yeah. And I think that's where you also have to start to adopt, because we know what, like you said, there's a lot of people that great start, and some of them even stall getting out of the starting line. But you just got to have and adopt that mindset, man. It's just, we have an attitude here, and our attitude is we execute. And I think it takes surrounding yourself with people that complement you. And we talk a lot about theory of constraints, and it's always, what are we doing? How are we doing it? Who are we doing it with? The talent. It's all that, typically that is always the biggest constraint. It's always the talent. It's always the people. And really, I know we've really leaned into a lot with the, growing up with the disc. That was the very first thing I was introduced 20 years ago, was the disc, and understanding that personality, type. And, for me, the disc is just an energy management tool, but really the working genius. And what I look for, especially in the team around me with an attitude of execution, is I need tenacity. And I need tenacity in part of their genius, because what I know about myself is that tenacity is a frustration for me. So I am just exactly what you said. Great at ideas, great at getting things started, getting people excited, but terrible at getting it across the finish line. Can I do it? Yes, but it's not in my wheelhouse. It's not in my genius. So I've got to be able to have those type of people, but it has to start here with me leading with an attitude of execution, that we get things done. It's just part of our mantra. And I think for that to be possible, and it goes back to the definition again, is putting into effect of a plan, order, or course of action. And that really comes down to clarity of the vision. And I'm, without a vision, the village will perish. I've been on that side multiple times, to where, not seeing my dreams being able to be accomplished by being a part of the vision that I was a part of. And so therefore, you lose great people when you lack the clarity of a vision. But I think it also hurts you as the leader, to be able to execute when you don't even really know what you're executing on.
Yeah. Yeah. It is such a weight going through your day-to-day business if you're not clear on the vision, if you're not clear on the priorities, ultimately, if you're not clear on what you're doing on a daily and weekly basis. There's so much freedom and so much momentum when you have that clarity. Waking up every day and not knowing what you're going to do that day is a horrible feeling, and it's just, the absolute enemy of execution and progress. So it has to be clarity. I totally agree with you.
So when you have that clarity and what we know what we're going to execute on, I think there's a couple things that we need to be avoiding, right? And this is still part of our mindset, our attitude of execution, part of our mindset. And I think with that, there's a couple things that we need to avoid. There's really something that we need to develop, and then there's something we need to just accept. And one of the things that we need to avoid is the execution paralysis. And really that core emotion that we all have as human beings, really is the fear of failure. And we get into our heads, and it's the, fight, flight, or freeze. And for most, it's freeze, right? We just into a state of paralysis. And I think it's lack of vision, it's lack of focus, it's a trying to do too much, right? We don't typically die of starvation. We usually choke ourselves out trying to consume too much. So less is more for a lot of us. If we can simplify it down to, if I do this one thing, then I can make progress on it and I can just build momentum from there. The other big thing to avoid, right, is the stories that we tell ourselves. And it's the lies. It's the if I, right? It's the if I's. If I had more money, if I had a better team, if I had a little more expertise, if I had greater demand, if I could, had the project completed, if it was done, right? So I think those are lies, and those are excuses that we tend to allow ourselves off the hook from why we're not executing. And so I think just being really, really careful of avoiding, those type of beliefs, and definitely don't say those things out loud, right? Because, we start to internalize that, and we really start to anchor it in. We really start to believe it. Yeah. And so we got to really be careful to avoid those lies.
Yeah. And it's harder than ever right now too. I mean, like you mentioned in the beginning of the episode here, 10% to 80% of just time being spent, consuming things. And it's the blessing and the curse of the internet and of what's coming with AI is great information, great resources are more accessible than ever. But that also means it's easier than it's ever been before to convince ourselves that we're working on the business when we're just consuming more content. And we know, hopefully we know deep down, we don't need another podcast episode at the moment. We don't need another event or another tool. We need to execute. Yeah. But it's really, really easy to get stuck learning more, trying to consume more, trying to get better at something instead of just doing it.
100%. And I think, just going and not allowing yourself. And so I think developing a mindset on progress, not perfection. Yeah. And it's one of the things that I've had to kind of adopt and learn on the endurance side of things. Forward is progress, right? Forward is a pace. Like, we're moving forward, even if it's one slow step at a time, we're still making progress. And I think that then falls into kind of the whole gap in the gain concept, is measuring how far you've come instead of how far you have to go. Yeah. And it really is key in anything and everything that we do, because we typically are, then you look at the entrepreneur, even on the disc side of things, you fall into that driver type category, high D, maybe type, personality, visionary type personality. We tend to, be hard on ourselves, and that we're not, progressing and not progressing fast enough, yet we are making progress. So developing that mindset on progress, not perfection. Yeah. And I think that leads into the other thing, is acceptance, and being able to accept. I remember Tony Geary has a saying that's, 87% is good enough. And, I think you could even lower the bar a little bit lower, and, maybe even a 70% version of yourself is good enough to continue to make progress and get steps and steps ahead of everybody else around you who's just sitting around trying to make something perfect.
Yeah. Love it.
So Joel, I want to, everything starts with mindset. But I want to kind of transition, as we were kind of talking about the things and what it takes to execute. And there's a really good framework from a book that we both read a long time ago when it first released. It's been 10 years or more that book's been out. And it's the 4 Ds of execution. And I would love for you to kind of walk us through the 4 Ds of execution, because I think that really, once you have the mindset, is really a great framework to be able to, to execute on, and really to be able to put all the components and pieces in place, because it's not just one thing, right? It's not just accountability. It's not just mindset. It takes a mixture of things to really be able to execute at the highest level. So I think the 4 Ds of execution is perfect to really unpack and be able to share for people to, to implement into their day-to-day to be able to execute at a higher level.
Yeah, and you nailed it. It's a framework, and what I love about it, I'm always looking for great frameworks. One of the things that makes a great framework for me um, it's simple, and so there's four elements, four disciplines of execution, and so we focus on each one of those four. What's great about that is if we're failing, there's four failure points that we can go back and look at and identify in each one of those four disciplines of execution. So I love it because a great framework it's a starting point, and then we need to apply the framework and we develop the skill. And I think one of the things that gets missed a lot when we talk about execution is that it's a skill to develop. You need to develop it as an agent, as a team leader, as a business owner. And if you do have a team, your team has to develop the skill as well. So four disciplines of execution. It's the best framework that I've ever seen for executing, again, because of the simplicity. So I'll just run through the four real quick, and then we can kind of double click on maybe some of the failure points or any other places you want to go with it. But four disciplines of execution. Number one, focus on the wildly important. So they call them WIGs in the four disciplines of execution, wildly important goals. We talk about that. That could be like our rocks. That could be our critical few, whatever terminology you like or use in your business. But it's our 1, 2, maybe 3 most important priorities that we're focused on right now. So you talked about getting clear and focus. How do we translate our vision all the way down to execution? It's about getting clear. It's especially when we talk about execution, it's about getting clear on the most important things we're going to work on. And it's not 5. It's certainly not 10 things, right? It's in a perfect world, it's 1 on a 90-day planning cycle. Maybe it's 2 or 3, depending on the team and the capacity, how much you guys can get done.
Yeah.
But first thing, focus on the wildly important. And that's also the first failure point too, right? Trying to do too much, focusing on too many priorities. I think it was Jim Collins who originally said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any.
Yeah.
I totally believe that. So first discipline of execution, focus on the wildly important. Just like that's a skill, saying no is a skill. Keeping on course, not drifting off of those critical few things we're going to work on. So number one, focus on the wildly important. Number 2 is act on lead measures. So one of the failure points of execution is we focus too much on the results at the beginning of our execution, or our lagging indicators, our GCI, our revenue, the number of deals we've closed. Those are lagging indicators. Those tell us about our results. They don't tell us about our activity. So when we talk lead measures or leading indicators, we're talking about our activity. And can we directly tie our activity on a daily and weekly basis to moving the ball forward towards the wildly important goals that we're chasing? So what are some examples of this? Like we said, GCI, that's a lagging measure. What's a leading measure? That could be as simple as number of phone calls that we're making. That could be the number of leads that we're generating, the number of conversations that we're having. The important part about the leading measures is that they're focused on activity, and they're things that we can control. To be great at execution, we have to be spending time on things that we can control. I can absolutely control how many dials I make today, how many doors I knock on, how many emails I send, how many postcards get in the mail, that kind of stuff. So we have to focus on the activities, which is the leading measures for execution. If we only focus on the lagging indicators or the results, which obviously are important too, we'll find out that we wasted a lot of time, didn't get the results we want because the activity wasn't there. We ended up hoping to get a good result instead of controlling our activities.
That's so good. And I'm glad you said it, because that's, to me, is what it is. Is this within my control? We want to measure and track everything, but the emphasis has to be on the things within my control. And in the real estate game, there's only a handful of things that's within your control. Everything else is outside of your control. It's like, hey, I'm going to take a listing today. Oh, well, I hope you do, but that's not within your control, right? The client could reschedule with you. Their kid could get sick at the last minute and they have to reschedule. So when you're putting your emphasis on your weekly and daily, activities to achieve the outcomes you're after, it has to be built on those indicators at the front end, and you always have to ask yourself, is this within my control? If not, obviously we still possibly want to track it, but however, we need to shift our focus and make sure that we're doing everything that we can and hitting at least, the targets of those activities within our control.
Yeah. So on the first two, I think, and it's kind of a natural separation point, the first two and the last two. So people who tend to just be terrible at execution across the board still struggle with the first two. What we see more commonly with successful agents or successful teams is they struggle with the second two. And this is kind of where we get into the starters versus the finishers. So the second two, number 3 is keeping a compelling scorecard. So wrapped up in the idea of a scorecard is obviously we're tracking not only the lead measures, our activity, but we're also tracking the lagging measures, the results. It's also reporting. So we have to get that data into some kind of visual for us that becomes our scorecard. And then it's updating regularly and reviewing it regularly. So the scorecard is such a critical piece. And a lot of times it's the missing link between the activities and the accountability, which we'll talk about next. So discipline number 3 is keep a compelling scorecard. So have to be good at tracking, we have to be good at reporting, and then we have to build into our process, our weekly process, a time to review that scorecard so we can make adjustments if we need to.
Yeah, it is. It's so good. And the dashboard that we utilize, the agent to CEO dashboard, it tracks everything from all the critical functions within the business. And the big thing is that we set the monthly targets, and we use, red, yellow, or green, yellow, red to determine, are we on pace? Are we off pace, but we have a plan to get on pace? Or are we off pace and we have no clue? And that's where the constraint, and then that's where we want to kind of focus on the issues for the week. And is this kind of, then we look, okay, hey, is this above the water line or below the water line? If it's below the water line, meaning what sinks ships, right? Yeah. Taking on water is what sinks ships. So if you have something that is in the red on your compelling scorecard, you have to ask yourself, hey, is this going to sink the ship, or is this just going to make the ship ugly? And so that's really where we want to pay attention to. Now, if we're in the green and we hit green, then we want to increase it. That's how we grow. So if it's green and maybe we only increase it 3%, 5%, 7%, 10%, 12%, it doesn't matter, right? Whatever that is. And so, we'll just be able to do that. And that's how you really keep and utilize a compelling scorecard.
Yeah. And the agent to CEO scorecard is fantastic. Again, I love it. It's simple. It's easy to understand. It's easy to use. So if you guys want a copy of that, reach out to us. We can get it over to you, but it's a great tool. I use it. I use it regularly too in my business now. It's a great tool. So keep a compelling scorecard. And then number 4, create a cadence of accountability. So this is what ties everything together. And this is really what, when we talk about starters versus finishers, the accountability is really what the finishing part means. And what's tricky about it, and like you mentioned earlier, we've got who's going to build it, but then who's going to manage it. The accountability piece never goes away. We never stop having that piece because that keeps us on track. We're always going to be using our accountability cadence to look at the scorecard, to evaluate the activities, make sure that we're still focused on our wildly important goals. So the accountability piece is where most people fall off eventually. Sometimes we start great on accountability. It's really important. It's top of mind. We're going to talk about it all the time. And then we get, a few weeks later, a few months later, and it starts to drift. And that's where most people lose it in the long term, is we just let the accountability piece drift. That's why they talk about not just creating accountability, but creating a cadence of accountability. For a lot of things, that's going to be a weekly review. Especially if it's a new initiative, we're really trying to execute at a high level. We're going to probably look at it every week. Eventually, once that, whatever we're executing on is installed or implemented in the business, maybe some of those things can go down to a monthly review where we're looking at the scorecard on a monthly basis. Are we on track? Are we off track? If we're off track, why? Let's figure it out. If we're on track, do we increase the goal? But it's the cadence of accountability that's so critical, because it never goes away. Maybe the timing, like I said, goes from weekly to monthly, but the accountability cadence never goes away, or things will inevitably drift at some point. Maybe it takes a long time to drift, but if we're not looking at it, if we're not having those accountability conversations, if we're not talking about why are we off track, if we're off track, excuse me, then it's going to drift. And so we have to install the cadence of accountability, not just accountability.
Yeah, I love it. And like you said, I think there's some things that can be held accountable on a monthly basis. There's some things on a weekly basis, and then there's some things on a daily basis. It really just depends upon what it is. And I really like to see the act on lead measures. That's probably a daily accountability, right? Are we doing the things that we need to do? A lot of the scorecard stuff can be looked at on a weekly and monthly basis, and maybe even the focus on the important goals, right? Is that a weekly cadence? Is that a biweekly cadence? Is that a monthly cadence? So being able to take that into consideration, I think, really depends upon what we're trying to accomplish as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think what's so powerful about executing in this way is you can only really focus on a couple things at a time, right? But once they're built, when it's executed properly, your business can manage a lot of things that have been built properly. It's the building, it's the execution that's the lift. That's what takes the effort. That's what takes the energy, sometimes the money. But once it's built properly, managing it is so much less work. And also the managing of it can be done by a lower level employee versus, you might be involved in the execution part, but you shouldn't be involved in the managing. So maybe, this quarter we're super focused on new lead generation, and we're going to build great systems for our lead generation. Well, now that we have those systems built, we've got the scorecard in place, we have the accountability cadence in place, what it takes to manage that process is so much less. So then maybe next quarter we move on to, all right, we focused on lead generation. Now we're going to focus on lead conversion this quarter, and we're going to put great systems in place and execute on a plan to increase our conversion. Well, that might be a lot of work, a lot of time and energy and money into that. But once it's built and executed on properly, managing that takes so much less effort, and we can move on to the next. So where so many people fail with execution is, again, these half-built systems, and a half-built CRM takes more work than just having no CRM whatsoever. But once you get it fully built out the right way, it becomes so much less work to manage it. So our execution, what we're talking about here, is not the day-to-day running of the business. The execution is all about new projects and new priorities. And sometimes we're going to revisit them, right? We might have a quarter where we're focused on lead conversion every year, and that's one of our main priorities that we're going to execute on, and that's fine. But the day-to-day running of the business is not what we're talking about with execution. You have to maintain the execution. You have to manage it. You have to make sure the accountability doesn't drift. You have to make sure you don't abandon your scorecards. But what we're talking about is new things in the business, either fixing big problems or chasing big opportunities. It's not just the day-to-day managing. You have to have the management in place to make sure that doesn't fall off. But execution is about new initiatives. It's not just about running the day-to-day.
As you're talking through here, and I am just thinking through with listening to you talk, and it's like, this ain't sexy at all. And however, this is the separator. You can have all the sexiness in the world. You could be great, world class at attracting things into your ecosystem. But if you don't know how to manage it, and you don't know how to really execute on and deliver on the promises that you're making, I mean, people are out the back door, and then you develop that type of reputation. That's what your brand becomes, right? Hey, they're great they're world class at that, at being able to attract, but they can't execute, or they can't fulfill on promise. They can't retain. There's the other issues there when you just focus on building machine on the front end, which is what we all talk about, and all the things that we really, being well-rounded. I mean, obviously it's, being able to attract, create demand, create traffic, but then being able to convert the opportunities, but you got to fulfill on the promise. And then you got to be able to retain the opportunities that you create. And if you just focus on more on the front end, this is why you've got to have a framework of being able to execute, because you've got to be able to put in the other components that allow you to convert, that allow you to fulfill, and that allow you to retain the opportunities that you've created. And I mean, this is the separator. Like I said, it's not sexy, but it is the difference maker in those that will leap ahead and have consistent, focused growth moving into the future.
Yeah. And you want to talk about, investing in our businesses. When you say, if I say, invest in your business, where everybody's mind goes is usually some kind of marketing or lead generation campaign. But one of the best ROIs you can get in your business is investing in the staff to manage the things that you build. So you can execute. What trips people up is you think that you need the staff who can execute, but you need the staff who can manage the things that you execute on. You can still control execution, especially if you're down to 1 or 2 things per quarter to execute on. You can still be the builder and the starter and invest in the people who are going to manage the processes, the people who are going to be consistent, reliable, detail-oriented. That could be a VA, that could be somebody in the office. But investing in the labor to manage the things that you build is one of the best ROIs you can get in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I mean, that then comes into, like I said, it's the what, the how, the who, and the who is the most important piece, right? Like I said, it's 80% of most people's constraint is having the right talent and the right team around them. And that also comes in team members, but that also comes in having the right support, mentors, guides, coaches as well. And, man, I would like to spend, the last few minutes kind of going over what I feel is very special in what we've created to really help folks execute. And we took all of this into consideration, right? All of my experience, all of your experience, all of the coaching programs that we've been a part of, that we've ran, that we've invested in, that we've, been a part of for the last 20 plus years, and really put together what I think is it's a hybrid of the best of the best.
Yeah.
And it's what needs to happen to be able to execute at a very, very high level, right? And when you look at what we all need, right, at the end of the day, the only time that you're investing in anything is because you want a result. You're hiring that team member because you want a result. You're hiring, that service because you want a result. You're hiring that coach, that mentor. You're bringing them into your space. You're investing in them because you want a result. But when you look at the boxes that need to be checked to be able to execute at a high level, we took into consideration a couple things. One, you need a proven framework. Okay. Like what we talked about, the 4 Ds of execution is a framework, but you also need a proven framework to be able to grow and execute and build your business. And that goes into what we talked with mindset, goes into clarity. It's going into the right business model. It's the right strategy. It's the right people. It's the right mindset. And being able to have all of those components, being able to have a proven framework. It's also to be in an environment to where you get a lot of proven ideas. And that's super important is to be around other individuals that can give you proven ideas in a way to share information, because there's only 3 ways to share information, and how you share it is super important. And I think learning to even ask the better question, but one is, this is my experience. Two, this is their witnessed experience. And three, this is an idea. And so being able to be in an environment, in a framework that gives you a proven framework, gives you proven ideas, also does some done with you services, kind of walking through the path with you, on the journey with you. And then that last component, and we talked a lot about it here, and was the cadence of accountability, is having accountability. And really, putting this all together, we took all of that into consideration. And so how do we structure that to where they are able to focus on just 2 of the wigs per period, no more than 2, only 2 wigs per period, being able to dive into their daily accountability and focusing on the things and setting up that culture of accountability, of focus on the things within our control, making sure that they have a compelling scorecard in place to being able to see. And then with the framework within the community of having that accountability that you're running every 2 weeks, and you better have your work done when you come back. You don't want to be that guy in the group that comes back and like, man, I didn't do what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
So being able to do that. And then I think the other hybrid component of it is still having a one-on-one connection. And this is where the hybrid of it comes in, to focus on the mindset. Yeah. And being able to dive deep and get out of the smoke and really get into the fire on particular issues.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this program because it connects the dots, stuff that I know you've struggled with in coaching, which is at the end of the day, you can't execute for your clients, right? You can help on the mindset, the strategy, the roadmap, which I think you're the best in the business at, but you're not in their business working on it. And then from my side, starting my fractional COO company, I'm operating under the assumption that you already have a lot of clarity. The vision is clear. The strategy is clear. I'm coming to help execute. And I'm finding as I get deeper in with clients, that's not always the case, right? They're not always clear. So what I love about our program, Boardroom, is we're starting out with deep dive on clarity. It is the vision, the strategy. From my side of things, it's the current reality of the business. What are the systems and processes? What's the tech stack in the business? And then we move into these 2-week execution cycles, which for me, we talk about a 90-day planning cycle, but a 2-week execution cycle is perfect for almost every small business that I've ever encountered. 1 week, when you're a real estate agent, you can't always control what 1 week looks like. You get busy, you get a couple more listing appointments, but on a 2-week execution cycle, you can get a lot done. So we work on that clarity, really deep dive clarity up front in that one-on-one time. And then we move into these 2-week execution cycles. So we come back together, the full group, every 2 weeks. We talk about what we accomplished, where we fell short, and we make sure we're clear, again, getting clear regularly on the next 2-week execution cycle. And then we're there to support you with the tools that you've proven have worked through the agent to CEO methodology, things that I've used in, across several businesses. And then again, we've got that one-on-one connection that comes back on the monthly one-on-one call, because even if you do the deep dive on clarity can drift too. So you have to make sure we're clear on the plan, but then you have to make sure we're staying on top of it and not drifting off of the plan. And so I love the monthly one-on-one with mindset. Are we still clear on the goals? Are we drifting at all? But I just love we spend a lot of time up front on clarity. We move into these 2-week execution cycles, and we regroup one-on-one every month to make sure that we're staying sharp. So I think it's the best structure that I've seen of pulling together everything that your program offers traditionally, but then adding in that kind of deeper focus on execution. So I think Boardroom is really cool, and I'm really excited to be working on it with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited. And if you guys want more information, you can jump on, you can go to sevenfigurecall.com, book a call. We'll see if it'd be a good fit for the program. It's not built for everybody. It really is a commitment to be able to have the pieces in place, the commitment to execute. And so the doors are open. However, they're not open to everybody. You got to be a good fit to be a part of the program. So you can go to sevenfigurecall.com, get that booked. But also, if you got any other questions or want anything else from us, DM us, message us. We'll be able to, love to support and help. And, really excited about what I really feel is the best of the best program of everything that I've seen to really check all the boxes that are super important to be able to grow your business consistently. And like we say, more life, more profit.
Yeah.
So good. Brother, I appreciate you. Fantastic as always. So good to always talk about, revisiting the key components of the disciplines of execution, and, always understanding to having that mindset of execution is absolutely key, especially right now, when there's so much noise and so much distraction, to be able to break free from that, to be able to really create some space, in your business from any perceived competition that you have out there.
Yeah. Love it.
Good stuff. All right, brother. Appreciate you. Guys, jump on a call, 7figurecall.com, and we'll see you next time. See ya.